Recently, I pulled myself out of my self-proclaimed Iron Man suit retirement after 3 whole years to build a new Iron Man suit for C2E2. But first, let me explain what led me here. Those of you who have been here for a little bit know that I was a big Iron Man suit builder for a very long time. And then I branched out and built some more variety into my content after suit number 5. I had a bit of an issue. I was unhappy with my skills, I was bored with suits, and in general, I was just kind of burnt out. But then I took a little bit of a break to recharge, pick up some new techniques like painting, electronics, multi-material work like rubbers, urethane, silicone, all that fun stuff. And now I feel ready to take on my dream 42. Now I'm gonna say the most controversial thing I've probably ever said before. Iron Man 3 is my favorite Iron Man movie. Ever since I was around 13 years old, I've dreamed about this suit being mine. I used to print out paper templates even though I knew nothing about assembling them. I made a janky copper wire arc reactor, which is what taught me how to solder, and I had a dream of being an MIT engineer. Well, it's safe to say that didn't work out. But that didn't stop me from chasing my dream of having this suit. When I was around 19 years old, I built my first attempt at the 42. This was a fully foam suit from Pepakura files made by Heligak on the RPF. And if you know about that website, you're a real one. It obviously was not good because it was my first suit ever, horribly proportioned, the whole shebang. I did a few more foam suits after that, the Mark 7, the Mark 46, and then I decided to try the 42 again in 2020, this time with some 3D printers I had accumulated and just started learning how to use. I also decided I would be crazy and attempt an exoskeleton inside of the suit, which led to this not only being the fattest looking suit ever, but also being a literal saw trap on my body that stabbed me in every way possible and was just incredibly painful to wear physically and mentally. I'm editing right now. Oh my god, how did I ever leave the house in that thing? It's so bad! Somehow this didn't like completely discourage me afterwards, and then I did a 3D printed Mark 6 battle damage suit. And it worked okay, but honestly it sent me over the burnout edge after it broke flying to and from California for WonderCon. And now we're here. And I'm so ready to just pour my soul into this suit and do it the way that I wanted to do it for so long. I'm not gonna stop till the suit is perfect, and this video is just barely scratching the surface, but here goes the first scratch. Also, don't mind my cold. I just got back from C2E2 and I think I caught the con plague. So what makes an Iron Man suit great is always the files. I used a suit file made by my friend Levy 3D, which you can find on Wireframe. I always like to add my own flair to files that I don't make completely myself, so we'll go over that in a bit and what I adjusted for comfort and just fun little detail spots. Over the years, I've perfected some sort of guess and check method of scaling suits in Blender, so I went through this entire model and I scaled it perfectly to my body. Usually I'll create cylinders based on my body measurements and just pop them into the model to see if things will fit. This meant adjusting the torso to fit my whammon hips. I tried to make the legs as skinny as possible and as tight as possible to create that CGI long leg illusion and the thigh gap, and then fill the gaps as much as possible. Now, depending on the part, I went through a few different printed iterations, but the part that I prototyped the most was the legs, which is funny because I actually have the least amount of footage because I was like, oh, I'll just record it later because I was con crunching, and then I forgot to. So here's some iPhone footage of me testing the leg and some close-ups of the mechanisms. I will always tell people to prioritize your legs when you build an Iron Man suit. I know everybody wants to start with the helmet. It's the cool part, I understand, but if you cannot walk, you are screwed. Your legs also kind of determine the scale of the suit as well. So based on how the legs look, you kind of want to scale the rest of the suit. Otherwise, your legs can look too short, too wide. Just start with the legs first. It's beneficial. The concept I used for the legs was developed by my friend Nick, aka Plentiful Props 3D. It utilizes a linear rail in the thigh that connects to a TPU strip that runs through the entire leg. So this allows the front of the thigh to slide down when you bend your leg, and it gives you more room to lift your leg and walk better. This is really important for the 42 because the legs sit so high up on the leg that if you don't do this, you're gonna have a really hard time walking. I also designed a spring-loaded ab mechanism that would allow me to bend while keeping the abs aligned perfectly and without making them scalloped in appearance. And I eventually discovered how to use torsion springs. Once the prototype pieces were finalized, all suit parts were printed in Polymaker ABS for strength. ABS also sands like butter, which helped me a lot with the paint prep process. I printed the arc reactor in resin to preserve tiny details and also so I could get good clear pieces. These files were made by Neon Robotnik, and I swapped between normal resin to clear blue resins to just plain clear resins for these parts. I did modify the file a bit so the arc reactor could fit magnetically into the chest and be removable. I used NeoPixel rings to light up the inside, which was powered by an ESP32 that controlled the rest of the torso. Now, while the arc reactor is a fake power source for the suit, let's talk about a real power source that keeps our shop up and running, provided by our sponsor, Blue Eddy. The Apex 300 is a hefty, portable power supply that is capable of running partial or whole home backup in case of a power outage. With 120 and 240 dual voltage, the Apex 300 can be hooked up to major appliances, electronics, devices, AC units, you name it. The unit can be recharged through a wall outlet, solar panels that you can order through their website, or even from your car. And with convenient charging settings that you can set on the unit itself, you can be 80% recharged in as little as 40 minutes with turbo mode. Keeping the unit plugged into the wall while the power is on allows the Apex 300 to switch to battery power instantly when main power is lost, allowing you to seamlessly keep important things powered in your home or your shop. So imagine you have a printer printing, and then suddenly have a power outage, and that immediately switches on and keeps your printer running. To prove that the outlet's actually off, this is the one that I just shut off. It's on, not running. So it immediately switched to this, and it's running my print effortlessly with no pause or anything. So this would work for, AC, refrigerators, emergency medical machines, but in this case, we're using it for a printer. The Bluetti Apex 300 is leading the industry with only 1/3 of the energy consumption of competitors and boosting energy efficiency by 200%. Bon appetit. The unit also has a 17-year lifespan, a 5-year warranty, and even after 6,000 charge cycles, it can still maintain 80% of its battery capacity. The Apex 300 can also pay for itself in 2 years by enabling peak load shifting. The unit can automatically charge from the grid or solar during low rate hours, and then switches on and powers your home during peak pricing. You can monitor your real-time savings in their app as well. Bluetti is a pioneer in clean energy, committed to creating a sustainable future by delivering green energy storage solutions for both indoor and outdoor use. So if you want a reliable, cost-saving solution for clean energy to use as a backup for your space, check out the Bluetti Apex 300. Use my link below in the description to get yourself a discount. Thanks to Bluetti for sponsoring this video, and now back to the suit. So I have the greater portion of the torso printed. I also have a giant pile of stuff over here, but this is a big part of the build. Scale is really good. The abs are kind of like in a test phase right now, but I'm gonna finalize that design, and that will be the ab system. I added motorization for the bottom panel as well, because these two panels move. I designed a bigger detail piece for the arc reactor holder, which is sitting over there. And then I also switched the direction of this, the middle panel on the back. So it opens this way instead of this way, because in the movie it opens this way and you can pull like a little missile out of it. It's kind of cool. So wanted that. I want to do some preliminary stuff on this, and I want to strap it together. I'm gonna work on the shoulders and the biceps and attach it to this, maybe pad this a little bit so it sits a little bit higher because it's supposed to. And then I'll try it on and see how movement feels. Yeah, mobility is king.
Nice.
Once most of the suit parts were printed, I swapped to a completely different section of the suit, the rubber parts. My absolute priority was making the suit comfortable and mobile, so I set out with a goal of making any parts that may be fragile or uncomfortable out of urethane rubber.
I made a neck mold. This is the back of the neck. And what we're gonna do is just sandwich this together. I'm gonna seal the edges with hot glue, and then I'm gonna inject through these holes. What I'm gonna try to do is make a semi-flexible urethane neck piece so I can put pressure on it and I'll be able to move, but it'll also be more comfortable. It won't break or scratch. And then after this, TC90 by BJB Industries, BJB Materials. This is a flexible clear coat for urethane. Since the car paints I'm using are urethane based, I can mix them into this paint and then color match the neck piece to the rest of the suit. The whole experiment is to see if I can effectively cast stuff out of urethane and then paint it to match the suit. I don't want things to look different in color or like sheen. I think that like makes it look fake or like cheapens the appearance of the suit.
We started out with a test of the neck, which told me air bubbles would be an issue since I was injecting the urethane into the mold.
I don't know if I'm doing any of this right.
This came out better than I thought.
This is an air bubble, unfortunately.
This neck test also became the paint test piece, and the colors and finish came out really well. Overall, this gave me confidence that the method would work, and we moved forward with cautious optimism.
Okay.
Wow, squinchy paint.
Nick helped me create molds for the neck, ankle flaps, hip flaps, hands, undergloves, and joint covers such as the elbows, shoulders, knees, and hips.
We have carrots on the floor.
We decided it was easiest to slush cast these molds since injection molding was a little complex for us to start out with, and I didn't want to risk large air pockets that would ruin the piece.
Oh boy. What did I just get myself into? It didn't work.
We used various versions of the Illuminate Flex series urethane. For pieces like the gloves, we would cast with Flex 60. For the ankle flaps, we used Flex 80. And for joint covers, we mixed different shores together to achieve around a 35 to 40 A shore hardness. Now, unfortunately, this still wasn't a walk in the park. I believe the urethane has like a built-in mold release, which caused reactions in some of the parts when I was painting them. We also discovered the hard way that tinting the urethane was very important to the coloring of the part when painting, and that we should have just cast the entirety of the gloves in one piece instead of all separately.
I woke up this morning feeling really good, and now I don't feel good anymore. This is a table full of rubber Iron Man parts. What's weird is like we didn't tint the neck seal. We didn't tint most of these pieces the same way we did with the test piece. And so now these just look like dummy gloves. They're like somewhat like transparent or translucent, and like it makes it look like gummies. Like you could eat those.
Like candy.
That it would have been so much easier to just do the glove in one piece versus like the hand plate and then all the fingers. That was me, wasn't it? That was my fault.
Yeah, it was you.
I don't know why. It would have been literally 2 molds and then 2 sessions of rotocasting.
I think 2 molds instead of 14. But it's okay.
We would have been done by now, man.
Yeah.
The fingers caused us so much pain.
You know, like, as a concept, they're cool. They're not cool, actually. We ended up sanding and repainting my original Mark 42 hand that I made with, like, the exoskeleton suit, which are those. But, like, look at how much better. Look at how lumpy the fingers are.
Yeah, they were
They're
lumpy because the fingers
like-
were so thin, and the CA glue, when you glue the strapping in between, it shrinks, and it started to scrunch up the back of the fingers.
But also the rotocasting is like inconsistent. So it's like you get these chunky parts and you can see it. It looks gross. Visually, these look better.
That's so sick though.
We still moved forward with the rest of the painted urethane pieces and tried to make them work as much as possible. Then I moved on to sanding and painting the suit. Now luckily I didn't have to do a ton of sanding work with this since it printed so smooth and the ABS was so easy to sand. I did a few passes of 120 to 220 and then a light pass of 320 when the filler primer was on. The sanding process only took a few days, which saved me some time to tape and paint because, wow, was that the hardest part. But before I went ahead and painted, I had to do some battle damage. The specific version of the suit that I've always wanted to do was heavily inspired by the Hot Toys figure, heavily damaged panels that I could swap out with clean ones. So for the con, I went the damaged route with plans to have a more clean version in the future. My plan was to lightly weather the entire suit regardless so that any scuffs and scratches it acquired during use would blend in naturally. Taping off the suit for each color took 6 days total. There were 4 colors that were used and I sourced real automotive paints to make it legit. I would literally sit there for 2 hours and meticulously tape just to paint it in like 2 seconds and restart the entire process all over again. I also decided for the clear coat I would use a 2K satin clear coat. I feel like this was a risky choice, but that the 42 never looked extremely shiny to me, just metallic. Satin would give it that extra metally look and not cheapen it too much by being overly shiny. Here's some funny footage of me 2K'ing the suit, which required me to run back and forth in order to set the suit down somewhere safe and clean, aka not the paint booth. Fun fact, every single Mark 42 I've built has involved a hospital visit in some way. When I built my first one, I developed a shellfish allergy in the middle of it, and I went to the ER. My second one had a wisdom tooth procedure, and this one had me get an endoscopy literally 3 hours before this clear coat footage. I'm not sure why the 42 is the suit of hospital visits, but let's hope this is the final time. Once the suit was 2K'd, I technically just had to detail and leather it, and finalize some strapping to make it wearable. I went over the edges with Molotov chrome pen for a chipped paint effect, and airbrushed some whites and blacks onto burnt spots. I was able to then wipe away the airbrush paint with a Q-tip and reveal the chrome underneath. I had the most fun with this part, because battle damage just feels really therapeutic for me, and it's something I feel really confident doing. Once the suit was painted fully, I used one of these back brace straps to attach leg strapping to.
I can feel it coming out.
We have to clip that. I can feel it coming out.
I can feel it coming out. Look at me sewing like a proper woman. I sew so infrequently that I had to actually look up the instructions.
You said sewing like a proper woman when I was the one that had to tell you how to backstitch.
Yeah, I build Iron Man suits, not dresses. That sounds like a Panic at the Disco song. Could be doing a lot of heavy lifting.
This would help distribute the weight of the legs more evenly on my body. I did discover at this point that the armpit joint covers would not work since they so easily fell out of the back of the suit when I moved, so I may end up making a custom bodysuit or a bigger joint cover for these parts since the paint was also rubbing off easily anyway. Then all that was left was final assembly. I did try to get some lights and motorization done, but I only ended up having time for the helmet motorization, the eyes, the arc reactor, and the detail light in the chest. I would also like to reiterate that my only priority for this suit was that I make a comfortable, wearable suit, so I was pretty content with this decision. However, if you want to see me slowly upgrade this suit over time with advanced electronics, more complex rubber parts, and mobility, follow me on my Instagram. I may also make a part 2 update as well if enough people ask for one. Now, given the fact that I have never had a comfortable, mobile, good-looking Iron Man suit before, I was very happy with what I was able to accomplish here. The total build time for this was about a month and a half. I know there are minimal electronics in it so far and so much I want to upgrade already, but just this alone felt like an achievement. So, without further ado, here's my new Mark 42.